Well, I mean, if I was in a caustic mood, I would say that's utter drivel. If I was in a gentle mood, I would say, well, I understand why people feel that way because it's repeated so often. But let's see if it's true. What is it? What can we give an example of something that it is true of? Well, you breathe, right? Now that's a function of a natural law. It's a biological function. And in fact, if I said to you, violate that law, you can't do it without killing yourself, right? So it's a powerful law. Now let's look and see whether or not there's some sort of a biological imperative to behave in a market fashion. Well, just ask yourself how you behave with your friends or how you behave in your family, right? Do you sit at the dinner table and barter the soup? Do you sit at the dinner table and decide whether or not the young child is going to get soup by whether or not they have enough money in their pocket to have the soup? Do you determine the relative value of things in the family by competing for them? Of course not. There's no drive to do that. The drive to do that exists in society is created by the fact that we live in a market system. It's not that the drive is inside us and creates the market system. It's that the market system imposes an environment in which to behave any other way is to lose. So of course we behave that way. So you can think to yourself that it looks like it's coming from us. It looks like it's a law of nature. After all, it's in my personality. It's in my behavior. That's true. But the reason it's in our personalities, the reason it's in our behaviors, isn't because it was born there. It's because we live in a context. And historically, it's also true that the emergence of capitalist markets was a gigantic struggle, a gigantic imposition against the natural inclination of people to behave in a much more collective and social fashion. It had to be coercively imposed upon people. So it's not the case. But it is the case once you have markets that they have incredibly profound impact on our desires, on our personalities, on everything about us. That's the whole point. That's why I want to get rid of them, right? It's because the question arises and displays something that's very true. For example, of a stark example, in the 1950s in the United States, it was called the golden age of capitalism. And there was a certain amount of output. So there was this much output per capita in the economy. And then 40 years later, there was double that. Almost exactly, just coincidentally, double the amount of output per capita. So if you think about it, you realize that if in 1995 people work half as long as they work in 1950, right, after 1955, then the output per person will be the same as it was in the golden age of capitalism. So you sort of ask yourself, well, why aren't we working 1 month on and 1 month off? Or why aren't we working a 3.5-hour week? After all, that technological innovation has created the condition in which we can do that, and we'd be as well off as in the golden age of capitalism. So why don't we do it? And the answer is because markets don't let us. It's not that everybody got together and decided we'd rather work twice as long as we could. And in fact, people work longer than they worked in 1955. People didn't decide, I want to do that. I mean, even the rich lawyers didn't decide, I want to do that. Rather, market competition compels it, coerces it. Because if you don't do it, you get out-competed. So there's this drive to accumulate, this drive to work ourselves to death, in essence. Now, it's also true that where'd the extra product go, right? Where'd double the output go? Well, it partly goes to military stuff to protect the system. It partly goes to police stuff to protect the system. It partly goes to cleaning up the ecological messes that the system produces. And it partly goes to the rich. And so the normal person is marginally better off. And in fact, from 1970 to the present, the normal person doesn't get better off at all. All the advantages go to the powerful and the rich. It's a horrendous system. And everybody knows it. If you look at popular TV, or you look at the bestseller list, and you sort of read the novels in it, it is incredible the extent to which the thrillers and the legal thrillers and I read this stuff and the mysteries and so on. It's incredible the extent to which they'll have things like the pharmaceutical company that's trying to get a profit by dumping its waste or by creating an incredible abomination of a product or by hurting its sick people, etc. And if you read it carefully, it actually understands why. Most of the time it doesn't attribute it to the nefarious individual. It turns out to be an outgrowth of the drives and the pressures of the institution. So at some level everybody knows this. At some level everybody understands it. But as you say, they think of it like aging. They think of it like the wind. They think of it as something inevitable. And so they feel like, yeah, I know it, but I don't want to wallow in it. I don't want to compete in it. In fact, I'd rather hide from it because it's so miserable. And there's nothing you can do about it. Well, the fact is there is something you can do about it. You can change it. I mean, we can actually live under a different system. Just imagine somebody saying under cannibalism or under slavery or under dictatorship, well, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, they'd be wrong. There is something you can do about it. You can get beyond these archaic systems and move closer and closer to fulfilling human capacities. And that's what we need to do.